Hey, this is the Genesee County Compassion Club show coming to you from allpointstv.com. I'm your host, Jeremy. Glad to be back in the studios here. I got John behind the camera making it happen. What's up, John? Give a show.
Yeah, I'm here and I'm ready. No. And this time this is going up, so yeah, it's probably about the false start. Yeah.
Hey, no problem at all. We got things going on down here, and glad to be back in the studio. It's a beautiful day. It's May. The spring is on. The planting is going strong, and hey, we're back here in the studio. Like I said, it's good to be surrounded by trichomes once again. I've got some news and information I want to share with you this week, let you know what's happening down at the Genesee County Compassion Club. I'm also going to get you updated with what's happening with medical marijuana in and around the state and the country, and that's what's up. So I will get started with letting you know about our events that we've got going on. First one that we have happening with the Genesee County Compassion Club is, of course, our soup kitchen. So we'll be serving again down at the North End Soup Kitchen. That's with Catholic Charities here in Flint on Stewart Street. It'll be happening on May 27th. This last Friday in May. So mark your calendars, get down to the club, and plan on serving in the afternoon. You get a bite to eat, and you get to make people smile. There's nothing better. So we got that going on. Other things happening. I want to mention this. This is going on in our area, and it's becoming a relatively big event, bigger every year. And of course, I'm talking about the Michigan High Times Cup. It's happening in Clio, and it is going down on June 11th and 12th. That's at the Auto City Speedway there in Clio. I've been doing it now for 2 years, and this will be their third year in the area. Like I said, the event just keeps getting bigger and better every year, and I just want to make mention of it on the show. I know we got a lot of members, a lot of people from around the state want to attend that event, and you can get tickets now. Just go to High Times on Google, pull it up, it's real easy, and you'll see the Clio, Michigan event. So don't miss that. It's going to be a big hit this summer, and you guys will all be talking about it. If you miss out, you're going to be sorry, that's for sure. All right, that's about it for events. We've had a busy spring. We had our 420 celebration. We had last month, we had our soup kitchen, of course. We also had our Adopt a Highway, got out there and cleaned up M13. Thank you to all our club members and volunteers who helped out with those events. I know we're still giving away water down at the Genesee County Compassion Club. Obviously, the situation here in Flint is not over. Obama was here last Wednesday, and the problem's not fixed yet. So still got to watch out. I thought it was kind of interesting that they're talking about in the news in regards to the water, how, it's okay to drink the water out of a filter if you're at least 6 years old and you're not pregnant. And I figured, so how is it that if you're under 6 or if you're pregnant that it's not okay? And I find that interesting. I'm just speculating here, and it sounds to me like not all of the stuff is getting filtered out of the water. Because if it were, then why would there be any type of precaution for pregnant or young children drinking the water? Doesn't make sense. I don't know. Who do you talk to about this stuff? Because they don't want to give you all the answers on the news. I know a lot of folks in Flint here are just stuck dealing with bottled water, from everything, feeding their pets, taking showers, those are things that, go beyond the regular eating, drinking, cooking kind of stuff. This is a concern for everybody in the area, and obviously, just because the president was here doesn't make the problem go away. So, I don't know. You definitely need to check this stuff out. And, I thought it was also kind of interesting that Obama sits down at a desk and takes literally like a sip of water. That was like the smallest drink I think I've ever seen anybody drink. That was like Bill Clinton's I didn't inhale kind of puff. It was... Did anybody see that? Are you with me on this, guys? It was a pretty small sip. I don't know. If it's so doggone safe, then why didn't he take a big gulp? I don't know. Anyways, I'm moving on here. I'm not going to talk about the water anymore. You guys, I have had some questions about people saying, well, what do we do with water in our plants? You guys deal with marijuana. This is for patients and caregivers, working in the garden. Do they need to be concerned about lead in their water? And, the truth of the matter is yeah, you do need to be concerned. You don't want to have hard minerals in your water when you're watering your plants, not just because of the fact that there might be lead there, but in general, it's not a good idea to use hard water for your plants or water that has a lot of sediment in it. It can build up in your plants, it can lock up your roots, it'll increase the parts per million inside of your medium, and ultimately, you're going to have troubles growing your plant if you're giving it water from a source that is just loaded with, like I said, sediment, build up, minerals, salts, you name it. You don't want those things. So a lot of folks are using reverse osmosis filters for their garden. And of course, now you might be wanting to use that for yourself as well. So, RO systems, obviously, they're one of the few types of filtrations out there that are going to filter out all of your sediments, breaking that water down to zero. And, if for eating, drinking purposes, if we were talking about worrying about things like viruses, bacteria, things like this, you'd have to boil it too, but thankfully you don't have to do that for your plants. At any rate, yeah, RO filters, that's the way to go. You do end up, having wastewater from that because it filters out the dirty water, and it can be expensive to run. So it's one of those things that you have to consider the cost effectiveness of it. And, the other thing that you can do is just try to rinse your plants more frequently. But, if you're rinsing your plants with water that has minerals in it, then you're not really rinsing your plants. So something to think about. It's another one of those challenges that caregivers and patients have to overcome here in the city of Flint. And also, throughout Michigan. Michigan's got a lot of hard water areas, and those minerals and things can build up inside your plant's medium, the stuff that your plant grows in, like the dirt or whatever it is you got your plant growing in. And those buildups can cause, your nutrient levels to rise, eventually getting them all out of whack, and then you end up having deficiencies and other issues showing up inside your plants. And you can start off clean slate every time just by going with reverse osmosis filtered water. So think about that. All right, I got some news I wanted to share with you about marijuana, besides growing tips and so on. One of the things I wanted to mention today on the show is a little bit of an update with our neighbors to the south. I'm talking about the state of Ohio. Ohio has had multiple proposals for marijuana. We're talking medical marijuana proposals. We're talking bills that have been presented in the House and in the Senate in Ohio numerous times. Even last year, made major news, national news, with their legalization ballot. This was for adult recreational use. And of course, most people heard about the fact that this was kind of like a monopoly grab going on. And so it was ultimately rejected by voters and it did not pass. So unfortunately, the folks in Ohio have not had any medicinal relief. There's been nothing approved for recreational purposes. They do have a pretty liberal decrim law for those people who have been caught with small amounts of possession. But as far as people being able to use it for medicinal purposes in Ohio, you're out of luck. There is no medicinal exception. There's no grant. There's no leeway, no nothing. It's, do not pass go, do not collect $200, go directly to jail. And of course, you can imagine if someone's suffering with MS, AIDS, cancer, some other type of life-threatening illness, and obviously cannabis could provide immediate relief for them, it seems archaic to deny them the type of relief that they are seeking, especially with a criminal penalty attached to that. So the Ohio legislature has taken note that obviously the public is in favor of marijuana, at least to some degree, and they put together a set of bills to address that. However, we're seeing some monopolization go on again. So it seems to be that Ohio wants to have marijuana, but unfortunately there's some big players in Ohio that say, yeah, you can have marijuana, but only if we get to make the money. And, I think this kind of legislation is just a joke. It's a kick in the face to democracy and to the people that those politicians are supposed to represent. We cannot move this country forward if we don't have some activity and growth at the local Main Street level and continuing to provide only paths for rich people to accelerate their successes in it's not the way. It's not the way to build this country back to being beautiful. So this bill here in Ohio, what they're talking about is setting up a medical marijuana control commission, which would then establish an industry for medical marijuana. It would decide who gets to grow, who gets to sell it, who gets the licenses, how much they're going to pay, so on and so forth. One thing that they have made specifically clear is that there will be no home grows allowed in Ohio. So if you're planning on providing medication for yourself in Ohio, if this bill passes, your plans are going to be thwarted. They will not be allowed. So you will only be able to get your marijuana, if this bill should pass in Ohio, through the state-approved institutions that they decide to create. So some different groups in Ohio that are supportive of medical marijuana. I want to mention one of them, which is Marijuana Policy Project. Obviously, they're a big group across the nation. They have also been supporting another group called Ohioans for Medical Marijuana. It says here, their comments from their director spokesman, Aaron Marshall, says the latest version fails to address the critical flaws in the bill that significantly restrict patients' access. So, he points out to a similar provision here. Marshall says a similar provision in New York led to just 556 of the state's 90,000 doctors agreeing to see medical marijuana patients. So you're limiting access, you're limiting the control to a very select group of people. And, obviously there's a lot of folks out there that could benefit from medical marijuana. There was an article that was just rehashed recently here in Michigan where Governor Snyder was alluding to the fact that we have a very large percentage of our population here in Michigan that qualifies for some form of disability, and that is due to pain. So here in Michigan, you can see, even according to the governor's own words, there are a lot of folks out there that could be benefited by medical marijuana. And when you're going to put these kinds of restrictions on future states like Ohio or like what's been done in New York, it doesn't really serve the purpose, and it doesn't really get out there and help people in the way that it should. So it's good that Ohio is stepping forward. We know that Ohio, like I said, has had a lot of history here when it comes to trying to get medical marijuana be available to people who need it. But yet nothing's been done yet, and it seems that the models that they continue to come up with in Ohio are really just meant to benefit a few rich people and not really benefit patients. So I would say poo-poo on the Ohio bill. If you live down there, you need to get involved. Your legislature knows that they need to do something. They know that the public is in favor of this, but they don't seem to have the direction that they need to move forward. They need your help. They need your direction. That's what they're there for. So let's get on it. All right, there's another informative piece of news here I want to share with you. This is about the DEA. The DEA has approved a clinical trial of medical marijuana for PTSD. I got this information from MAPS. They're let me slow down here just a second. It is a multidisciplinary association for psychedelic studies. If you have not checked this organization out, I would recommend you do so. Abbreviated as an acronym, it is called MAPS, M-A-P-S. Incredible group. They do a lot of research, and one of the things that they're bringing up here on April 19th, which was actually my birthday, it's awesome. April 19th, the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration gave its final approval for a long-awaited trial of smoked marijuana for PTSD in 76 U.S. veterans. It's a major accomplishment, marking the first time that a clinical trial intended to develop the marijuana plant in smoked form into a FDA-approved prescription medication has received full regulatory approval. They expect this study to begin this year once they receive marijuana from NIDA, which is the National Institute on Drug Abuse. And if you don't know, right now the federal government is the one that is responsible for growing all of the marijuana that is to be used for any federally approved studies. So consider that right there. If you are an established medicinal institution that wants to do some sort of a study, like this one here wants to study smoked marijuana on PTSD victims through the VA. If you want to do that, the medication has to come from NIDA, which all of their medication is grown down at the University of Mississippi. Now here's the interesting fact I'll point out to you. Most of the cannabis that has been tested out of the University of Mississippi through NIDA has an extremely low cannabinoid content test results. And it is amazing to me that our government, who has obviously put millions of dollars into cannabis research and has equivalently given millions of dollars to the University of Mississippi for this NIDA marijuana growing program, is only able to come up with that. I mean, we've got caregivers in Michigan that blow their numbers out of the water. And I also think it's interesting that if they only have a limited amount of growing capacity, a limited amount of strains there at the University of Mississippi, obviously it's going to limit their ability to research because they have such a limited cannabis profile available to them. So as us that are working in the industry, we find out daily that all of these different cannabinoids that are content in the plant have an amazingly different result when it comes to working with patients and what types of symptoms it is that they're suffering from. So you need to have a good variety of cannabis to adequately find out what cannabis is working for that patient. And from what I hear, the University of Mississippi and the NIDA program is inferiorly lacking. All right. So, but it's good that the DEA is approving trials. We need to have more research. I think I just read an article the other day about how marijuana should not be rescheduled by a Harvard professor, stating that the reason it shouldn't be rescheduled is because there hasn't been enough research. That statement right there is a complete lie. There has been an enormous amount of research for its medicinal purposes, not just done here in this country, but done around the world. And for anyone to say that is just an outright lie. Hopefully it's only based on ignorance and not, being deceitful. But I'd have to assume that a Harvard-educated professor would be a pretty well-informed individual. Maybe they need to do a little bit more research before spouting off comments like that. There has been an enormous amount of research. You can look it up for yourself. Our government has patents on medical cannabis for medicinal purposes. So if that should prove something to you right there. There's already patents issued by the government for marijuana. The research is there. It is time to move forward with policy. That's what we need to have. All right, next subject here. I want to bring this up. All right. MI legalize? You guys, we've talked about this on the program before. It's obviously, this is the petition to legalize marijuana for adult recreational purposes here in Michigan. They are out busily working right now, gathering signatures, trying to get enough signatures to qualify this for the ballot in November. And time's running out. By the end of this month, the signature gathering period will be over for MI legalize. And I am being told that they recently just hit a milestone of 300,000 signatures. Now, the state level that is required to get something on the ballot is actually below 300,000. So they've already passed that mile marker, and they're looking now to get additional signatures for any of those that cannot be verified or need to be duplicated or whatever. So they're doing everything that they need to do. MI Legalize is probably one of the best grassroots campaigns I've seen run here in the state of Michigan, certainly in quite some time. It is truly a grassroots campaign. There's no big corporate bigwig behind this. There's no monopolizer pushing this type of program out there. This is people doing work for people. So pretty cool, pretty positive, pretty amazing thing that you can see citizens in Michigan still getting out and affecting the way things are going to be here in the future when our legislature is unwilling to do it themselves. And quite frankly, it seems that citizens have a better ability to craft legislation that is more in tune with what the people want than our legislators do. I know that that's a bold statement, but I think it's true. And I think that's something that is telling of how our current legislative body works. I mean, if they're more in tune with what corporate interests are in this state and less in tune with what the people want, that's opposite of what this government's supposed to be doing. They're supposed to be listening to the people, and we need to be able to tell them what it is that we want to see. Legislation like MI Legalize is going a step further because they wouldn't listen, and it says, hey, here's what we want, we're going to get it done, and they're trying to do so. So they could still use your help. You can go to milegalize.com, you can sign the ballot if you haven't done so, or help collect signatures if you want to. Donate money if you can. And we're going to find out in a short period of time here, probably by the end of May, on whether or not you're going to see this on the ballot here in Michigan this November. I know there's a lot of folks talking about it, but there's a lot of work still yet to be done to see if it can actually get there. So it's probably one of the ones that has the best shot here in Michigan. I know there's a couple other ballots out there. Abrogate Prohibition is another one, which would legalize adult recreational use of marijuana. That's something else you can check out if you'd like to. But right now, I think what the focus should be on is the one that's running out of time, and that is MI Legalize, and they're really close to being able to get to what they need to get to. So if you can support that, please do. Spread the word. You only got a couple weeks left. As we move forward here in Michigan, and even if MI Legalize for some reason doesn't make the ballot, or let's say it makes the ballot but doesn't get voted through, which I think are both unlikely, but let's say even if that happens, there is a large push right now in the Michigan legislature to address marijuana driving. So we're talking about people who are buzzed by marijuana, and now they're getting in the car and driving. So first of all, do we have anything on the books that addresses this? And the answer is absolutely yes, we do. Michigan has a very extensive impaired driving law that simply is a blanket overall of all substances. and all conditions, really. And it basically says you can't be impaired and drive a motor vehicle, which, that's common sense, all right? It should be that way. Nobody wants to see anybody getting behind the wheel when they shouldn't be there in the first place. And, this is something that we don't want to see change. However, if we're going to look at this, we need to look at it from a scientific viewpoint, and we need to look at it also with a common sense viewpoint. And I think that when we talk about, imposing limits on marijuana use when it comes to driving, first of all, I think what we need to look at is someone actually impaired? Is there already a law in place? Can officers effectively do their job with the tools that they have today? Or do they need to have something that would enhance their ability to do so? These are questions I think that have not yet been answered, and I think that they need to be addressed before we move forward. Now, currently right now, there's a House bill that's been introduced by Representative Lucido. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. It's House Bill 5024. You can look this up on milegislature.gov. Again, HB 5024. This bill is introduced as a standard, or at least to establish a standard for what should be considered drugged driving under medical marijuana or under marijuana use when it comes to someone operating a motor vehicle on public roads. So what this bill would do is it would establish a commission, it would establish a study and funds to figure out what should be the limit. The senator has said, or I believe representative has said, that the limits that have already been set in other states, such as like Colorado, Washington, so on, that those limits really aren't accurate, that they really aren't based on accurate science. And the representative here, Representative Lucido, feels that we need to do our own study to establish what would be an appropriate level, if any. Let me give you some of the levels that the other states have already gone out there. Pennsylvania, and I'm surprised to see Pennsylvania has a limit because Pennsylvania just passed medical marijuana here this last year. They do not have any recreational marijuana on the books, so it's relatively a conservative state, but they've got a limit here, and the limit is 1 nanogram. Kind of interesting. I don't know where they came up with that. Nevada and Ohio, their limit, 2 nanograms. Montana and Washington, their limit is 5 nanograms. And Colorado has something what they call reasonable inference. And that limit also is 5 nanograms for THC. So it's kind of interesting here, the limits that have been established here. It says Colorado's drug driving law states that in instances where THC is identified in a driver's blood and quantities of 5 nanograms per milliliter or higher, such fact gives rise to permissible inference that the defendant was under the influence. There was a case here in Michigan, just this, I think it was last year, maybe the year prior, where a person was pulled over, had THC in their system, was charged with impaired driving, and the case was actually dismissed because the officer was unable, with roadside testing, to prove that this person was actually impaired. So it was not in denial that the person did have medical marijuana in their system. They were a medical marijuana patient. However, they were not impaired. And I think that's something that we have to take into consideration. We have to take a very keen look at, because that really is the ultimate thing that we're concerned about here. It's not about what's in their system or what they've done, whether or not they're a patient, whether or not something's legal. It's whether or not they are impaired. That is the concern that the majority of us have out there. We do not want impaired drivers on the road. What we want to be able to do is to have police officers be able to determine if someone is impaired or not. And I really think that all this highfalutin technology to decide, you point this, you point that, I think all of that is overrated. I think the number one thing that we should be relying on is the officer's ability to conduct a roadside sobriety test. I mean, if someone is simply just drowsy, maybe they've been having, they've been taking Sudafed and their head's all cloudy. Maybe they have been drinking, or maybe they've been smoking pot. Whatever the reason is, we don't want them to be impaired. And what the test should be to determine this really should be a roadside sobriety test. Now, you can argue with me one way or another, and I have had some people tell me that roadside sobriety tests are inaccurate. There's a lot of folks out there that can drive perfectly normal but cannot pass a roadside sobriety test. Personally, I think that's hogwash. I think if you can't pass a roadside sobriety test, you shouldn't be driving. I don't care if you're sober or not. If you can't walk a straight line, how are you going to keep your car going straight? I don't know. It's just my opinion. But I do not think that we need to have a 10-year, multi-million-dollar study, which is what is being proposed here in Michigan. I don't think that we need to have, millions of dollars of gadgets handed out to our police officers across the state to test people for a test that is probably, in all reality, most likely inaccurate. Even some of the tests that they've already been using have only been to be proven accurate 50% of the time. So how it makes no sense. How are we going to put people in jail for something that, or jeopardize people's lives over something that isn't even accurate, and which they have no real defense in court to say yay or nay? This is something that I think we need to look at. I was just watching actually the other day on YouTube, a guy he did not pass a blood alcohol breathalyzer, the thing that you blow into. He popped in a piece of gum, chewed on it for a few minutes, and blew through it, failed the test. So even that mechanism that we're using all the time, and something that is used to definitively affect people's lives, even that right there has been proven to be sometimes inaccurate. And how accurate is this particular test going to be when it comes to testing THC in someone's blood level or saliva? I think that's what we need to look at. And I don't think that we need to have a multi-million-dollar 10-year study to figure this thing out. I can see people's concern. Nobody wants to have anyone impaired on the roads. It should absolutely not be happening. And I think that we need to address the version of what we consider to be impaired. I see people going down the road constantly nowadays on their cell phones. And I don't know if they're texting, maybe they're watching YouTube, maybe they're reading their email. I don't know. But to me, that is just as dangerous as someone who is impaired. So distracted driving, that's a whole nother topic. But, driving is a very serious thing. And so it is definitely understandable that we need to have some strict rules around making sure that the people who are behind the wheel are doing so with a clear mind and a clear ability to operate that vehicle. We don't need to have a bunch more tax money siphoned off to some company to do some research on some baloney that doesn't really make a difference. That's what we don't need to have. So, but please check this bill out. It's House Bill 5024 again. This is something that has been tossed around quite a bit here in the Michigan legislature. They feel that it is imperative to have this equipment on hand, functional, working, blah, blah, blah. They think that they need to have this because they feel like marijuana legalization is coming. If you talk to the people in charge at the state, they'll tell you it's coming. We don't know when. It might be this year. It might be 10 years down the road, but it's coming. We know that. So when it comes, we need to have a way to test people. You already do is what I'm saying. So let's get this under wraps so we don't piss away more of our tax money. And let's talk to our representatives about this. Obviously we want to keep our roads and communities safe. Nobody's saying anything to the differ. But what we don't need to do is continue blowing away our money. All right, let's see. I think that's about it for state stuff here. We've had a lot of different things going on. It's been a busy year here in Michigan with marijuana. We've seen some different busts going around the state. We keep having people talk about whether or not edibles are legal and so on. What we need to have is a frank discussion about what the law protects and what it doesn't protect. And sometimes the things that we see in the paper and on the news are not accurate, even though they're being reported as such. So if you really want to know what your protections are, what you need to do is go back and read the law for yourself. There's two very important sections in there, Section 4 and Section 8. And both of those provide protections for people who have a card. The other section that you need to take a look at is the definitions. So if you check those three things out, those are the core protections of Michigan's medical marijuana law. And there's a lot of confusion around it. I can't talk to one person hardly at all that's outside of the industry that doesn't have some sort of confusion on what is the limit, what you can do or what you can't do. And a lot of those things are kind of trailed off into terminology, unfortunately, and people talking about this or that. But what we really need to do is get right back to the fundamentals and read what your law says, because that's what counts. So I'd encourage you to do that if you haven't done so. If you have questions about this or that, if you can't afford an attorney, that's something that you can do is just go ahead and read the law. Doesn't replace an attorney, of course, but it's important that you understand, just like when you're operating your vehicle, it's your responsibility to make sure that you are operating that in a compliant manner. And it's the same way when you have a medical marijuana card. You need to make sure you're operating in a responsible, compliant manner. If you don't know what those rules are, you need to check them before you get started. So, all right, that's it for the Genesee County Compassion Club show today. Just wanted to keep you updated with a brief series of what's been happening. I appreciate you joining me at allpointstv.com. Make sure you check out all our other podcasts here at allpointstv.com. We've got lots of information about the city of Flint, what's been happening here, different community organizations that take place here at the studios. Keep you informed with all the good things that happen here in Genesee County and in Flint, Michigan. So thanks for joining me this week. Get out there and enjoy that wonderful spring weather. John, thanks for being in the studio with me again. You guys have a great week. We'll catch you here next week on the Genesee County Compassion Club show. See ya!